testing。
OK， 跟住無線嗰支，你前面係開咗佢。
testing。
三個 OK。
支有線可唔可以擺翻喺中間啊？
有線擺中間。大約呢個位 OK。好。
好，歡迎大家嚟到今次突發民間記者會。今日嘅主題係假執法之名，行戒嚴之實。我哋今日會有3個環節。首先係908遮打花園集會主辦方嘅發言，跟住係民間記者會嘅發言人發言，最後就係問答環節。喺開始之前，就請各位台前嘅發言人起身俾大家影個相先。首先望你哋嘅右邊，望向右方。望中間正中方向。好，再望左手邊。好，如果可以嘅話就開始啦，咁可以坐低。首先有請908遮打花園集會嘅主辦方。
喂，係，各位好。費單位已經喺尋日已經發出咗聲明㗎啦。咁重點概括咗琴日集會嘅目的啦同埋過程。咁並對於香港警方打壓是次嘅活動咧係作出譴責。咁歡迎各位參考新聞稿，如果有任何問題，可以喺稍後嘅問答環節嗰度就提出嘅。咁琴日嘅活動嘅主題就係香港人權與民主祈禱會，我哋預計係有5000人出席嘅，但係估唔到肯出席嘅人數竟然爆炸性咁樣超出預期。見到廣大嘅群眾喺呢個暴力政府強烈打壓集會、遊行、言論自由嘅情況之下，仍然唔畏縮、唔退讓，小弟同費單位對同路人能夠喺社會彌漫住白色恐怖之際，仍然勇於企出嚟，致以最崇高嘅敬意。我希望藉住民間記者會呢個平台，再次重申喺琴日9月8號香港人權與民主法案祈禱會嘅活動目的：一、表達現時香港嘅法治及人權受到嚴重威脅。香港已經成為咗一個法治已死嘅極權國家嘅極權地方。香港政府施政嚴重咁樣侵犯人權，踐踏港人多種嘅基本自由同埋生存權利。第二，指出中國違反中英聯合聲明條款，港人嘅民主夢係從未實現嘅。高度自治亦都於回歸之後22年一步步咁樣被蠶食。即使條文清楚咁樣列明咗港人係可以享有民主真普選，但係就喺2017年嗰陣時被剝奪。近日特首林鄭月娥更加被泄密，指其對北京橫行嘅干預無能為力，一國兩制純屬假象。第三，嚴防北京以統一戰線嘅名義顛覆自由世界。中共嘅內部同埋外部擴展，令到世界目睹咗中國共產黨對於自由世界嘅人民尊嚴同埋人權嚴重嘅威脅。第四，強調香港民主與美國利益息息相關。有多間嘅美國公司喺香港係有廣泛嘅業務，就只有透過定期檢討香港嘅自治，先能夠確保到香港嘅自治權係唔受干預，並力保美國人喺香港嘅利益。 第五，表達對香港人權與民主法案嘅堅決支持。美國政府透過每年去到檢視香港人所擁有嘅民主同埋自治嘅程度，以確保香港市民應當獲得與中國嘅國民唔同嘅待遇。為咗實現2020年雙真普選，希望美方能夠果斷咁樣採取靈活措施，包括對犯罪人士、侵犯人權者同埋佢哋嘅家庭成員實施嚴厲嘅制裁，例如好似拒絕入境簽證，又或者係凍結資產等等。第六，重申香港人皆有守土抗戰之責。香港民族有178年嘅歷史，即使喺共產中國70年間發生過無數次泯滅人性嘅暴行，香港人仍然懷抱希望，成功咁樣建立咗今日嘅國際大都會。對於是次嘅抗爭活動，我哋係絕不退縮，會盡力咁樣實踐香港精神。尋日嘅集會初步推算係有25萬人參加，人群由下午嘅2點至到4點半係佈滿咗遮打道、金鐘道、花園道，至到去行亞里北道。呢個已經係反映咗香港人對於爭取自由、民主、基本人權嘅決心。我方再次懇求香港政府唔好一次又一次咁樣踐踏、漠視民意。但可惜喺集會嘅中段，即使呢次活動已經係獲批咗不反對通知書，去到夜晚10點，但係警方強行咁樣去終止此次嘅集會，要求我方喺4點45分開始去解散集會，同埋疏散人群，完全罔顧不反對通知書嘅承諾，以致到我哋嘅聯署海報係無法如期遞交，引起咗在場市民不必要嘅恐慌。警方繼而封鎖咗幾個港鐵站，導致多名嘅市民受困。其後更加於喺港鐵站裏邊傷害，甚至係無理拘捕和平嘅遊行人士同埋無辜嘅市民。是次事件係已經顯示咗警方再次任意咁樣去濫用職權，無疑已經侵犯咗基本法第27條，香港市民擁有和平集會及示威遊行權利。我方再次強調，咁樣去譴責警方打壓香港市民享有嘅集會自由，罔顧市民嘅人身安全，再次濫用職權，使用過暴嘅武力。警方一方面命令市民和平咁樣散去，但係另一方面又要求港鐵公司封鎖其包括灣仔、中環及太子等各個地鐵站，又派出咗大量嘅防暴警察駐喺天后、炮台山、黃大仙等港島及觀塘沿線嘅地鐵站戒備，明顯係針對和平集會嘅人士。總括而言，是次集會結束之後發生嘅嚴重混亂，都必須去歸咎於警方草率嘅行動同埋失當嘅部署。最後，當獨裁成為事實，革命就是義務，呢個就係香港人嘅職責。
We will now repeat in English. We already issued a statement last night on the purpose of an offense during the assembly yesterday, as well as the brutal oppression exercised by the Hong Kong police force at said offense. We refer you to this statement and welcome any questions in the Q&A section in a few moments. Our theme for yesterday's assembly is the Prayer Assembly for Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy. The stunning number of people attending exceeded our expectation of only 5,000. Myself and this organization would like to express our most earnest ovation in light of the masses who have chosen to stand up, speak out, and resist this government's attempt to crush our freedoms, even in the face of absolutism and white terror. We hope to use the Citizens' Press Conference as a platform to once again reiterate the purpose of the prayer meeting of Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy held yesterday. First, to demonstrate the dire state of Hong Kong's rule of law and human rights. In our city, the rule of law is dead. the Hong Kong government has committed grave violations of human rights and trampled on not just the basic freedoms of Hong Kongers, but also our basic right to life by actively putting the lives of countless citizens in life-threatening danger. Second, to highlight that the Chinese Communist Party has seriously disobeyed the terms it agreed to in the Sino-British Joint Declaration. Our yearning for democracy has long been gathering dust on the top shelf, and the so-called high degree of autonomy Hong Kong is rightly entitled to has been butchered. The terms of the declaration clearly state that the citizens of Hong Kong shall enjoy democracy, but instead, dual universal suffrage have been robbed from our futures in 2017. Even more shockingly, a clip of Carrie Lam has recently been leaked that she revealed she is powerless in the face of Beijing's iron-fisted interference in Hong Kong. It is clear that one country, two systems promise has become a little more than a fairy tale. Third, to expose the thoughts, Beijing's efforts to wreck the free world in the name of United Front. The spread of the cancer that is the Chinese Communist Party threatens the dignity and the rights. The dignity and rights of not just Hong Kong citizens, but also of the peoples in every corner of the free world. Fourth, to emphasize that Hong Kong's democracy is intimately tied to the interests of the United States. Many American companies carry out much of the commercial activities and hold significant stakes in Hong Kong. The only way to protect American interests in Hong Kong is to implement periodic and frequent assessments of Hong Kong autonomy. To adamantly support the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. The regular assessment by the U.S. government of Hong Kong's democracy and autonomy ensures that Hong Kong citizens will not be subject to the same political fate as Chinese citizens, and pushes towards dual universal suffrage by 2020. We hope that American authorities can continue to work towards this goal by taking decisive and flexible action, such as imposing severe sanction on those who have committed atrocities against Hong Kong citizens and human rights abusers, as well as their family members. These may include, among other things, refusing visa applications and the freezing of access. Sixth, to reiterate that all Hong Kongers have the duty to protect our homeland. Hong Kong has a 178-year history. The 70-year history of the Chinese Communist Party may include innumerable incidents that baffle all expectations of humanity. But Hong Kongers survived this enslavement with a hope and determination that has built the international metropolis our city has become today. We will turn again to this strength of a character, so quintessential of the inhabitants of this beautiful city, in continuing our resistance against tyranny. Initial estimations put attendees of yesterday's gatherings at over 250,000. Crowds swelled between 2 p.m. to 4:30, teaching as far as Chapel Road, Queensway, Garden Road, and up to Lower Albert Road. This reflects the insistence of Hong Kongers on their values and realization of freedom and democracy. We once again implore our government to stop ignoring the deafening voices of public opinion. Lamentably, a few hours into the procession, despite the fact that it had been granted a letter of no objection until 10 p.m., the Hong Kong police force barged into the gathering, abruptly terminating it by demanding that we abort the event and completely disperse all 250,000 people by 4:45, plainly going against their own words in their letter of no objection. As a result, we could not submit the consigned poster to the consulate as planned, causing unnecessary panic among the crowds. The police proceeded to place multiple MTR stations in lockdown, trapping crowds within the confined spaces of these stations. This made for a convenient setup for them to beat up and unlawfully arrest not just numerous peaceful demonstrators, but also innocent commuters. This incident is another stark example of police brutality and abuse of powers at will, undoubtedly a gross violation of Article 27 of the Hong Kong among basic law, that citizens shall have the right of assembly and demonstration. We once again decry the flagrant breaches of the law by none other than law enforcement itself. The contradictory instructions by the police, on the one hand ordering us to peacefully and quickly evacuate, and on the other hand requesting the MTR cooperation to lock down multiple MTR stations such as Wanchai, Central, and Prince Edward, while sending an overwhelming number of riot police into the stations along the island and Kowloon lines such as Tin Hau, Fortress Hill, and Wong Tai Sin, clearly to ambush the peaceful protesters. All in all, the severe panic and confusion upon the conclusion of this gathering must be attributed squarely to poor planning and reckless disregard of the Hong Kong police force. At last, when tyranny becomes law, rebellion is our duty. This is the responsibility of all Hong Kongers. Thank you.
咁而家有請民間記者會發言人，有請中文發言。
是咪？假執法之名，行戒嚴之實。街坊路過便被捕，集會雖然有不反對通知書，但形同虛設。警察通例蕩然無存，港鐵站任意封閉，甚至全線停駛。無可否認，政權聯同警隊而家已經以執法之名行戒嚴之實，更用盡方法阻止香港人908集會向內求援。儘管香港人唔想承認，但戒嚴已經成為事實。林鄭月娥為求維持自己嘅政權，一手令香港呢一個國際城市進入軍政府狀態，市民跌入一個行出街都會冇因由、隨時被拉嘅地步。剛才警方喺記者會選擇性播放琴日嘅片段，刻意略過警方暴行，僅以中環售票機被破壞一事就宣稱集會再次被暴徒騎劫，卑鄙咁樣誤導大眾。正本清源，星期日事件發生嘅時序應該係警方首先喺中環站內無故向市民搜身，導致氣氛升溫。之後警方更加無故主動拘捕在場市民。值得重提嘅係，琴日集會係有不反對通知書，前往及離開集會並無違法。繼後警方強行提早終止呢個合法嘅遊行集會，更加封閉中環等多個地鐵站圍捕市民，只係俾數以十萬計嘅市民45分鐘疏散。再之後，先有示威者喺港鐵站採取行動，阻止警方到達地面繼續襲擊市民。所謂冇警察就和平，沒有警察無故濫捕，集會本身就可以正常舉行，警方先係自己口中嘅暴徒。基本法賦予港人嘅合法權利，例如第27條就規定香港居民享有言論、結社、集會等自由，以及組織同埋參加罷工嘅權利。同時第28條亦都規定咗香港居民嘅人身自由不受侵犯，內容就包括香港居民不受任意或非法搜查、逮捕、拘留等，禁止對居民施行酷刑、任意或非法剝奪居民嘅生命。但呢一刻仲有邊一個香港人覺得上述嘅權利受到政府所保障呢？另一方面，中英聯合聲明亦都協議咗港人嘅民主人權需要得到保障。中國政府公然否認中英聯合聲明嘅效力。請行政長官林鄭月娥話俾大家聽，港府係咪根基持有同樣嘅立場呢？你所默許警方做嘅一切，邊一點冇違反以上2條憲法以及中英聯合聲明呢？其實大部分嘅香港人都以為戒嚴同自己無關。喺呢一度咧，容我去解釋乜嘢為之戒嚴。戒嚴令嘅框架咧，正係禁止咗公眾集會，政府可以宣布任何地方成為禁區，每一位市民出入咧都必須警方嘅許可，甚至咧可以管制警方嘅交通，管制公共交通。雖然香港現行法例咧並冇戒嚴令呢一個法律用詞或者概念，但實際上警方喺過去1星期多番管制市民出入嘅自由，意同戒嚴無異。例如喺冇任何示威活動嘅時候，警方多次喺無法提出合理懷疑之下，喺全香港各個地鐵站要求市民列隊搜身。 喺9月7號嘅晚上，警方更加喺旺角鬧市阻擋行人以及車輛通過，市民連行街嘅自由都失去咗，黨鐵更加配合停駛。我哋必須承認，而家嘅狀況同戒嚴已經毫無分別。香港嘅人權以及自由狀況已經響起最終警號。即使港人琴日透過和平集會以及遊行去爭取美國國會通過香港民主與人權法案，向自由世界作出最後嘅呼救，但可惜合法嘅遊行最終都被粗暴干預以及暴力鎮壓。香港政府為咗孤立港人，除咗暴力對待本地市民以及一眾記者之外，更加多番阻撓外國媒體採訪，有警察向記者投擲手頭式催淚彈，有法國記者被警察毆打，更加有韓國記者被警方侮辱以及歧視其國籍，極力干預國際以及本地傳媒履行作為第四權嘅天職。香港嘅基本法、法治、人權等等都被林鄭政府一手摧毀，由國際之都一下子倒退到70年前嘅台灣、30年前嘅韓國嘅戒嚴狀況。林鄭月娥一手要令香港同佢一齊攬炒，今日落區仍然去關心嗰個地鐵襲擊，對比起警察暴打到頭破血流嘅香港人，以至一眾學生冇生命嘅死物，似乎更加重要。香港人，我哋必須要接受呢一個殘忍嘅現實，就係全香港已經進入戒嚴狀態。政府無意解決問題，只係想解決提出問題嘅人，局勢將會繼續惡化落去。香港人，我哋只能繼續抗爭，街頭見。
Since the 9th of June demonstration of 1 million people, Hong Kongers have walked for 3 months hand in hand to where we are now today. We've now become internationally known for our stamina and our will of steel against tyranny. And yet what we have received in return for this tyranny is a life which you could be arrested and attacked for just leaving your home and happening to walk in front of a policeman. A life in a police state. From the incidents of the past week, the police force has been trying to impose itself as the law. For us, the world is upside down. But the police are now legally empowered, emotionally unstable, and sadistic terrorists who oppress lawful civil activities. Is the government truly powerless to restrain the police, or is this just a disguise for its agenda to borrow the police's hand in silencing Hong Kongers even further? By the way, Hong Kongers now live in perpetual nightmare, in which our governors have become our tormentors. Deserted by our government, we can only turn to the outside world for help. Tens of thousands gathered on the streets peacefully with American flags and made their way up to the US consulate yesterday, braving the threat of being brutally attacked by police even for lawful demonstrations, to ensure that our appeal for the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act to pass is heard by the US Congress. And yet the rally was unreasonably, wrongfully and forcibly disrupted by the police as an apparent attempt to muffle our desperate call to the international community. Following their order to dismiss the immense crowd immediately, the police began injuring and unlawfully arresting both peaceful demonstrators and innocent civilians at key metro stations, through which the participants are needed to evacuate, causing widespread disarray and panic, and then pinning the blame back onto the protesters. Everyone agrees that the assembly would have proceeded smoothly otherwise. The remark, where there is police, there is danger, have now become an ever more accurate description of the absurd situation that we're in now. According to Article 27 of the Basic Law, Hong Kong residents shall have the freedom of speech, of the press and of publication, freedom of association, of assembly, of procession and of demonstration, and the right and freedom to form and join trade unions and to strike. Article 28 also states that the freedom of the person of Hong Kong residents shall be inviolable. No Hong Kong resident shall be subject to arbitrary or unlawful arrest, detention or imprisonment. Arbitrary or unlawful search of body, torture or deprivation of the life of any resident shall be prohibited. Rather than asking whether the police has upheld our constitution, the more meaningful question to ask indeed is, What part of their behaviour in the past few months has not violated these two constitutional provisions? Many still believe that they will be fine as long as they do not break the law, but they have forgotten that our current government has given up on the law. Carrie Lam might not have said it just yet, but martial law is upon us right now, every one of us. The indiscriminate attacks on civilians at MTR stations, people, especially young people, being ordered to line up against the wall for utterly arbitrary of a body search. Women being groped by policemen, a 7-year-old boy being clocked at the back of the head for no reason by a gang of police until he felt unconscious on the floor, soaked in his own blood, with a fractured shoulder blade. These are just a few items from the inexhaustible and still growing list of randomly executed police brutality and bodily harassments. Hong Kong now finds itself under what is effectively a curfew in all but name, one that is eerily reminiscent of the prelude to the Tiananmen massacre not so long ago. Human rights and civil freedoms are dying along with the people of Hong Kong. We are desperate for our last cries for help to echo far and wide, and yet what have our police treated our journalists? Members of the press have been placed in life-threatening danger and repeatedly interrupted for recording the truth, with foreign journalists being chased away from the scenes. A French reporter was beaten up by the police yesterday. A Korean journalist was also showered with racist comments from the police. Could they not see that their frenzied efforts to single out the people of Hong Kong from the rest of the world only highlight their hunger for violence and ignorance? The Hong Kong government and the Hong Kong police force have successfully and thoroughly disgusted both their own people and those from abroad. Hong Kong was still a city to be proud of only months ago. Highly sophisticated, efficient, beyond compare, safe, friendly and open to all. In whose hands was it ruined? Those of our very own leaders and law enforcers, who see their people as cockroaches to be exterminated, cattle to be manipulated and pushed around, perfect targets for bullying, something worse less than some electronic barriers at a metro station, something substanceless, senseless and voiceless, no matter how legitimate our cause and how much we have persisted to make them heard. Our government care more about inanimate objects than actual people. They are tireless in manufacturing false and illogical discourse to drown out the far more sensible voices of people. Hong Kong is now a city in which its people have been abandoned by their government and their law overturned, and their basic freedoms and rights snatched away from them. The people of Hong Kong are left with no options but to fight and hold on until a miracle happens. A twist of fate in this extinction rebellion of ours. If you hear our call today, please heed it, as we have never needed your support more than we do now. Thank you.
好，咁跟住落嚟就係問答環節。如果記者有問題嘅，可以舉手。咁照翻以往唔多於2條問題，同埋報一報自己點樣結構。唔該。
case evaluation 嘅小編，咁我想問2個問題嘅。咁第一個問題啦，咁就係警方警權過大啦，咁佢而家就不停去違反呢個無罪假定嘅原則，咁有咩睇法咧？另外一個問題就係今日理大嘅同學亦都同我講過啦，咁會唔會話民間方面會有啲咩嘅行動會去升級去抗衡翻警方嘅行動咧？唔該。
第一啦，先回答無罪假定嘅情況啦。相信咧有唔同嘅新聞報導都顯示咗啦，有一啲警方無理要求，例如咧身上面嘅手機咧要自己證明咧，要以解鎖嘅方法咧自己證明嗰部手機係自己。但係呢一啲咁樣嘅無理咧，即係用唔同嘅不正當嘅理由咧，嘗試去阻撓市民去行街嘅自由咧，相信咧並唔係一般港人普羅大眾咧係可以接受嘅。所以對於警方濫權嘅情況咧，我哋相信咧而家普羅大眾嘅香港人咧都唔會接受呢一種咁樣濫權嘅情況啦。而至於第2條問題咧，到底往後咧會有啲咩嘅行動咧？首先我哋係全數咁樣去相信咧前線手足嘅決定啦。而另一方面咧，我哋亦都明白到咧，而家咧人權受到侵害嘅情況底下咧，我哋嘅行動咧只會越嚟越密集，亦都越嚟越多。其實我哋都見到啊，太子831咧，仲有好多嘅疑團未解決嘅情況底下咧，每一晚咧都有數以千計嘅群眾咧喺太子地鐵站嗰度去表達佢哋嘅訴求。所以我哋見到嘅係咧， 而家林鄭嘅政府唔好妄想咧用佢嘅極權打壓咧就可以阻止我哋呢一班嘅香港人咧再行出街頭做抗爭。唔該。
係，有冇下一位記者有問題？
I'm Timmy from RTHK. Today, Exco member Fanny Law alerts that there are some young girls being misled to offer free sex to protesters. Are you aware of the situation and what do you have to say to her remarks? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Her claim is an insult to the intelligence of all Hong Kong people. Her allegations could not be supported by just the remarks of a friend on her cruise. That's what she's saying. Her claim is not supported by a single shred of evidence. She is making the claim without providing any evidence, and if it's true, which is a big if, we urge that she would provide the information needed to the law enforcement if it's really true that there are protesters giving free sexual services to others. And so this is another example of the smear campaign of the government against protesters. Even the protesters providing sexual services has already been an allegation in 2014 during the Umbrella Movement. This is another example of the smear campaign against protesters, and this just shows the quality of the government without legitimately responding to our demands. They have chosen to launch a smear campaign against everyone. And this is why we are against fake news and of all sorts. But ironically, this is coming from a member of the Executive Council. One of the representative of the government has led the public to spread fake news, and this is unbelievable to us.
商台第一題咧，想問翻咧，頭先話羅范椒芬嗰個言論，即係你哋點樣睇啦？同埋即係會唔會要求佢道歉啦？另外咧就係想問翻即係琴日集會嗰個主辦單位，想問翻警方係幾點鐘要求你哋係即係要疏散同埋即係解散個集會？即係喺短短45分鐘之內，即係我想知係幾多點開始計嗰45分鐘啦，同埋45分鐘對你嚟講要疏散，頭先你所講嘅有起碼至少25萬人，其實嗰個難度喺邊度咧？再去睇翻即係警方即係頭先嗰啲即係驅散行動合唔合理咧？你覺得？
我答到第一題先。先回應翻羅范椒芬女士嘅問題先啦。第一啦，咁佢係喺完全冇事實根據嘅情況底下咧，去作出一個完全無理嘅指控啦。一個前高官咧，竟然咧可以用一個 fake news 咧嚟誤導大眾咧，即係完全唔明白點解一個可以受咗咁多高等教育嘅人咧，可以講出一啲咁不負責任嘅言論啦。所以咧，我哋咧市民咧唔係想去道歉啊，係希望佢可以好好檢討大家，然後唔好再行出嚟獻醜啊。所以咧，我哋咧唔係妄求咧呢啲嘅高官嘅道歉，因為我哋已經厭倦咗咧呢一啲咧在上位者呢啲荒謬嘅言論啊，所以我哋唔需要佢嘅道歉，我哋淨係希望佢檢討自己嘅言論。多謝。
喂，係咁答翻頭先記者問題，關於集會要求解散嗰方面嘅問題啦。咁其實警方喺下午3:09嗰陣時，其實就已經要求主辦方去盡快去宣佈呢場活動嘅結束㗎啦。即係以佢哋話嘅安全問題啦。咁但係咧我就唔可以代表到全場人同意呢個理由嘅，所以我就去同籌辦節目組嘅人商討。咁佢哋話最少都要45分鐘先至可以真正係完成剩低落嚟嘅節目。咁我再打電話，然之後報翻俾警民嗰邊嘅同事，然之後佢哋先好婉轉咁樣同意呢樣嘢。然之後咧喺大約4點鐘嗰陣時咧，因為我哋考慮到即係大花園咧已經係爆滿人數㗎啦。然之後係有好多嘅想去參加呢個遊行嘅人士係包圍住遮打花園，係佈滿咗金鐘道啦、 花園道啦，同埋上面近美國領事館嘅下里北道嘅。咁如果係咁樣嘅話，即使我哋係宣布呢場活動已經結束，喺遮打花園裡面聚集咗嘅市民，究竟點樣可以突破到由咁多位想去參加遊行人士嘅包圍，即係好似包圍網咁樣一般咁嘅嘢咧？咁樣就會變咗疏散嘅人群，就會撞落去想去參加遊行嘅人士嗰度嘅咯喎。咁所以咧，我哋喺大約4點嗰陣時咧，就上台就建議行動不便老人家又或者係小朋友，佢哋盡量去靠近出口，就係確保到如果警方有再進一步更加強迫性嘅清場行動嘅話，咁就會減少到受傷嘅人數，同埋盡量唔好令到有人受傷嘅情況出現咯。
想補充多一點嘅，咁即頭先你嘅第二個問題 refer 緊9月8號嗰件事嘅難度喺邊咧？即係想補充翻個 timeline 咧，就係喺再早前，即係警方就因為我哋本身約咗領事館嘅時間咧係3點啦，咁佢就要求我哋提早開始個遊行啦。咁佢嘅原因就係話，因為我哋中環站咧其實已經係逼爆咗，或者已經係人流已經係湧到去，即係喺中環站嗰度已經係塞住咗㗎啦咁樣。咁所以即係人數方面咧，其實已經係根本係由2點鐘或者即係大概2點鐘之前咧，已經係塞到喺地鐵站嗰度啦。咁跟住喺3點零差唔多到4點嘅時候咧，咁因為係啦，頭先我哋手足都講咗啦，就係話喺嗰一個時間開始咧，因為佢就要求我哋即刻要宣佈啦。佢就話因為上邊花園道嗰邊已經出咗黑旗啦，加上下邊地鐵站咧被破壞，佢係用呢2個理由嘅。咁就話要求我哋咧係用30至45分鐘之內咧要即刻解散個集會。咁所以我哋當其時咧，因為顧及到其實在場都有好多比較年老嘅人士啊，咁所以我哋都已經即時就已經呼籲話，即係年老嘅人士，好似頭先咁講，都係盡快去疏散咯。咁但係因為上邊因為不斷都有人湧緊上去啦，咁跟住要佢哋行翻落嚟山，再加埋集會本身已經爆咗人，其實係好難去即係喺咁短時間內可以疏散到咯，就係咁。
我嘅意思係，佢哋係咪同意咗你哋由4點半開始計45分鐘之內疏散，定係由4點開始計？
點解係4點半咧？就係因為3點10，佢哋就要求我哋一定要宣佈結束呢場集會及遊行㗎啦。所以點解係4點半咧？就係因為3點10計起。
關於個時間嗰度都係想，我係香港電台記者，想關於個時間嗰度都係想再 confirm 一次啦，即係3點9嘅時候係警方第一次要求你哋宣佈要結束個集會，咁然之後去到即係4點半嘅時間，你哋先正式係宣佈要解散成個集會係咪？
佢其實係喺3點9嗰陣時打咗第一次電話俾主辦方，就同佢哋講話，因為係上面近花園道及下面地鐵站都有突發嘅事件發生，咁因為安全嘅理由咧，警方就要求主辦方以呢個理由咧，就盡快向在場嘅人士宣佈呢場集會及遊行就已經結束。但係因為我唔可以代表到全場人佢去同意警方呢個協議㗎嘛，咁我就同節目組嘅同事商量完之後，就佢哋俾到我嘅建議就係最少都係要45分鐘先可以完成到剩得落嚟嘅手尾。咁然之後我再通知翻警方方面，然之後佢哋先至同意喺4點半先至俾我哋宣佈咯。因為一開始佢建議我嘅時間咧係15分鐘至到半個鐘嘅啫，所以我哋其實係真係好難做，亦都係。其實係唔想答應呢個協議嘅，因為其實我哋同事連夜通宵趕起咗好多嘅文件啊、宣傳啊及節目，但係就係因為 好大部分嘅理由就係因為警方強行要求我哋喺本身原定2點半至3點先至開始嘅遊行，佢強迫我哋喺大約下午1點10即係1點50分左右就已經開始造成咗非常之多嘅混亂，做咗強迫我哋提早進行遊行之餘，仲要我哋提早結束呢場活動遊行同埋集會，呢個係令我哋非常之失望同埋覺得難堪嘅。
Hello, I'm with Voice of America. I noticed that the train stations often become a target of or a venue of conflict with the police, but I don't really see regular stores are damaged or buses are destroyed. So are you? I'm not saying you, I'm sorry. Are the demonstrators doing this because they think the MTR station is a fair government target because the government is the major stakeholder? And then also, again, as I said, I don't really see a lot of buses or stores are destroyed or in flame. So can you tell us the strategy or what demonstrator consider fair targets in the demonstrators' struggle to gain the goals, the 5 demands, and to achieve the democracy goal? Thank you.
Right, thank you for your question. We don't represent the frontliners, but judging from what we've seen, as you said, the protesters know their target. They're not causing chaos for the sake of causing chaos. They know their target. They are targeting at the MTR because the MTR has now become the tool for the police. The MTR closes their stations whenever they want, whenever they are requested to do so by the police or by the government. So we are seeing that MTR has become a tool to suppress the freedom of assembly, to suppress the freedom of expression. So that's why it has become a target for the protesters. So we know that the protesters are targeting the MTR because they are siding with this killing regime. They're not the MTR corporation that we used to know providing services for the public, but now have become a transportation network that closes down whenever there's a demonstration, and instead they use the transport police around and get the police to the site of demonstrations, or has become a transport tool for the MTR. And another major reason why the MTR is targeted is because of the Yunlong attack on the 21st of July, or the police attack on random civilians and passengers on the 31st of August. People are demanding the truth of what happened because the police have driven away journalists, obstructing their filming without the public knowing the truth. So the people are demanding what happened that night because there's no trust between people and the government. No matter what the government say, the people are not buying any of it because our government is a habitual liar. Even the government seriously clarified that there were no deaths on that night, but the people are not buying any of that. People need the truth. The only way to prove that it didn't happen and clear the police name is to release the CCTV footage of that night. So, in conclusion, the protesters know their target. They're not causing chaos purely because they want to disrupt the normal operation of the city. They are targeting it because the MTR has now become a tool for the government and the police. Thank you.
One follow-up, please. You want to do this one?
Thank you. To what extent can you influence the demonstrators on the front line? Right? Completely disconnection, or in a way that you have a way to communicate with them? Thank you.
I don't think any organisation or any individual has the right to really influence the demonstrators in terms of what they do on site, or so especially when this is a leaderless movement with the decision-making process decentralized. So people normally come to a consensus on online forums or through communication channels. So no organization or individual has a strong connection or can tell what the protesters on the front line what to do. So this has been the gist of the whole movement, and this is also the reason why we have come this far. It's because it's a leaderless movement where everyone can contribute, where everyone can have their ideas heard by others, and it is the why the movement have come this far.
明白噃，想問咧，因為其實好多唔同嘅，即係我哋所講嘅假消息啦，不盡不實、冇乜根據嘅傳言係流傳喺網上啦。咁來自嘅可能我哋講緊係藍絲，甚至係建制派。咁最新一則留言就係頭先我哋講嘅羅范椒芬啦，一個行會成員，會唔會民間記者會唔會覺得呢個係特區政府所創嘅戰術？會唔會覺得係羅范椒芬可以代表到特區政府去發表咗今朝嘅言論咧？如果係嘅話，民間記者會或者普羅大眾應該點樣對抗咧？覺得？
首先咧，我哋都唔敢擔保話咧呢一個會唔會係特區政府一個極權打壓嘅方法啦。但係我哋咧都係心存呢個懷疑嘅，即係點解會有咁多嘅假新聞上去抹黑我哋嘅前線嘅示威者，甚至乎係普羅大眾咧？就係因為咧呢個嘅極權嘅政府咧已經係好想去分化我哋唔同嘅示威者，嚟一啲嘅和理非咧同埋一啲前線嘅手足咧，去透過呢啲嘅假新聞咧，想做一個分化。先姑勿論咧，到底係咪呢個政府嘅所為啦？但係呢一啲咁樣嘅高官啊，甚至乎呢啲嘅當權者，用一啲不盡不實嘅消息咧，去抹黑咧我哋嘅前線示威者咧，根本上係不能夠被接受嘅。例如咧，用一啲去有關性嘅言論啊，一啲嘅侮辱咧，甚至乎呢一啲咁樣嘅消息咧，係透過一個女人咧自己去講出嚟咧。首先佢係極度唔尊重自己，亦都好唔尊重所有嘅女性啦。所以我哋係非常之失望嘅。而到底我哋點樣可以去抗衡呢啲嘅假新聞、假消息咧？我相信咧，唔同嘅前線嘅手足，甚至乎背後嘅鍵盤戰士咧，其實都已經咧係好努力咁樣咧，去嘗試咧做呢一啲嘅闢謠嘅工作同埋文宣嘅工作嘅。咁我哋係非常之相信啦，我哋一般普羅大眾同埋香港市民咧係會竭盡所能咧去壓止呢一啲嘅假消息嘅。多謝。
香港電台想問翻，即係對於羅范椒芬嗰個言論啦，其實你哋會唔會覺得係刻意咁樣喺呢個時候去做一啲抹黑咧？同埋擔唔擔心將來會出現更加嚴重嘅一啲抹黑嘅情況咧？第二就係關於831個太子個傷亡人數嗰度，其實今日警方喺記者會上面，即係消防喺個警方記者會上面都再一次澄清，就話可能係點算上面有重複啊，或者係可能因為一啲傷者事後又話唔需要送院。對於佢哋嘅呢一個解釋，你哋接唔接受咧？
首先針對第一個問題係呢啲嘅假新聞，其實我哋係相當之擔心會有越嚟越多呢啲嘅混亂嘅消息啦。例如其實禮拜日嘅集會咧，其實都係警方咧自己咧去製造一啲嘅混亂。到底咧呢啲嘅新聞嘅消息係真定係假咧？其實根本上咧我哋當刻咧都好難去分辨嘅。所以咧當刻嘅集會自由咧，因為呢啲嘅假消息咧所受到嘅剝削咧，我哋咧都係覺得會非常之失望啦。而針對第二點咧就係到底831咧，其實消防處同埋警方有自己嘅佢嘅一套嘅論述啦。但係其實大家有睇新聞都知道咧，其實《蘋果日報》咧亦都再次咁樣咧去發出咗佢哋嘅報導咧，去指出咧其實嗰3名嘅傷者咧並唔係消防處所講嘅。而點解而家普羅大眾咧都唔願意去相信呢個警方同埋消防處所發出嘅消息咧？係因為係源自於咧呢個太子站咧係無故咁樣封閉咗咧接近1日嘅時間，甚至乎講緊咧元朗啊其他嘅地鐵站咧，因為示威活動受到衝擊咧，都係短短1晚咧就即刻去開放。到底咁長時間嘅封閉背後嘅原因係啲乜嘢咧？到警方咧到呢一刻咧都未交出一個市民可以滿意嘅消息。而值得注意嘅係咧，當市民對於政府同埋公權力嘅機關嘅信任已經跌至谷底嘅時候咧，要檢討嘅咧必然係政府佢嘅本身，佢必須要還 挽回市民嘅信任。如果唔係嘅話咧，抗爭同埋不信任所導致更多嘅抗爭嘅活動咧，冇人咧能夠避免。多謝。
有冇問？
東方記者想問，今日個警察記招咧就講咗話，佢係建議呢一個集會發起人提早結束集會啦。咁佢有講到話係集會發起人接受咗佢個建議，所以先提早結束。咁想問翻你哋點睇，同埋會唔會 clarify 翻到底係乜嘢嘅狀況？多謝。
其實佢係話接受主辦方嘅建議，其實呢樣嘢係唔清晰，亦都係失實嘅。點解咧？就係因為主辦方係唔會主動要求去早啲去完結呢次嘅集會及遊行噶嘛。
你哋接受咗警方嘅建議咯，佢係咁樣講嘅。
警方嘅建議係10分鐘。
佢話你哋接受咗佢。
嗱，佢就係。
我覺得 instead of 即係多謝你嘅提問啦。咁我覺得 instead of 話我哋接受咗佢嘅建議，即係其實係佢嗰陣時，即係佢嘅 wordings 嗰陣時話俾我聽嘅就係話你哋要喺30至45分鐘之內要解散嘅，要宣佈解散，即係咪係啦咁樣要解散咗個集會咁樣。咁我覺得唔係話我哋接唔接受呢個建議咯，而係佢要求我哋做呢一樣嘢咯。咁我哋亦都冇權去拒絕佢呢一個要求咁樣。
補充翻少少啦，首先要確保翻呢個集會安全嘅責任咧，係由警方咧無故咁樣去推咗俾去主辦方身上啦。而警方唔合理嘅要求咧，即係剛才所述咧都有好多，例如要求15分鐘咁樣將幾十萬人咧即刻去搬離中環區域，根本上係冇可能啦。甚至乎根本上未疏散完咧，喺北打街、中環一帶咧已經有無故嘅搜身嘅行動，講緊針對嘅咧係啱啱完成集會嘅無辜嘅市民啦，所以我哋可以見到嘅係根本上就係警方俾一個陷阱，我哋呢一啲嘅和平嘅示威者去踩落去，所以我哋係強烈咁樣去不滿意咧警方咧喺星期日嘅種種嘅行動。多謝。
我亦都有留意到，我想補充翻多一點，亦都有留意到今日4點鐘嘅時候，即係警方所講咧，佢就話示威嘅活動咧延伸到去各個區域啦。咁即係作為主辦方啦，覺得唔係話示威嘅活動延伸到去嗰個區域，而係我哋宣佈完之後，即係或者未宣佈嗰陣時，中環站基本上已經封咗。咁我哋可以即係或者大家參加者只係可以做到嘅就係行過去，即係可能譬如話附近嘅站啦，譬如話上環站或者金鐘灣仔等區域啦。咁我哋一路行緊嘅時候，佢就開始慢慢已經，即係佢就開始已經喺度追捕緊咁樣。咁所以即係覺得呢一樣嘢要 clarify 翻。
所以最後再補充多一點啦，根本上群眾都未散嘅時候咧，我哋琴日都見到個事實就係，無論中環、金鐘、灣仔一帶咧，警方已經追捕緊，甚至乎港鐵咧係無故咁樣封咗站。去到傍晚嘅時分咧，甚至乎喺銅鑼灣咧，將一帶和平聚集嘅示威者咧，以催淚彈咁樣驅散啦。咁所以可見警方根本上就係有備而嚟，妄求咧用一個嘅陷阱咧，去就係去我哋呢啲嘅市民，甚至乎咧就係透過呢啲不合理嘅暴力咧，去壓止我哋往後嘅和平示威嘅行動。所以呢一樣嘢係並唔合理嘅。多謝。
請問有冇記者有提問？
明白過，想問多樣啦。頭先話警方提出嘅要求，你哋冇辦法去拒絕啦。但係其實當下你有冇問過警方，如果你哋唔宣佈集會結束，或者想持續個集會，會有咩後果？你有冇問過呢樣嘢？
俾1分鐘我哋好吧。我哋唔該晒你嘅提問啦。咁我哋當時警方講完話，佢話要求我哋解散個集會嘅時候咧，咁我哋就有提出過即係有難度啦。咁跟住佢就話，如果我哋唔宣佈嘅話，佢就會自己入場宣佈話個集會將要解散咁樣咯。 唔知呢個解答到未？
所以可以見到嘅就係咧，警方咧扮到咧就係話同大會咧有共識啦，根本上咧就係冇，即係佢單方面咁樣去壓個消息落嚟啦，所以根本上唔存在呢個共識嘅之説咯。
想問清楚嗰個入場宣佈係3點45分咧，定係4點30分嗰陣講嘅？
我唔係。
即係頭先話唔可以拒絕嘅嗰個要求係警方話3點45分，你哋唔提早結束個集會嘅話，就會入場宣佈啊，定係4點半咁樣講？
因為我再講清楚啲啦，喺3點50分嗰陣時，佢哋已經強烈要求我哋係盡快宣佈解散呢個集會。我同節目組嘅同事商討完之後，佢哋話最少要45分鐘。咁然之後我再報翻俾警方，然之後佢哋先答應我呢個要求，所以正式我哋嘅共識先會喺，即係唔叫共識，但係我會要求警方會起碼俾到我哋去宣佈解散嘅時間就係4點半咯。但係如果我哋4點半唔正式宣佈解散呢場遊行同埋集會嘅話，警方就係會自己入場嚟到去宣佈呢場集會及遊行會解散㗎啦。所以我哋諗到，你都知警方近日對於和平集會及遊行嘅人士作出拘捕嗰陣時嘅使用嘅過度武力係去到乜嘢程度，所以我哋先至會喺大約4點度上台去叫老弱婦孺小朋友去盡量靠近出口嚟到去疏散咯。
請問咪記者仲有提？
佢個問題，我想補充再問多少少。咁我想問咧，其實如果警方話45分鐘俾你散啦，點知警方而家講一套做一套咁樣喎？咁就喺後邊咁就去 set 晒啲嘢去圍捕啦，又或者去封站啦，諸如此類咁樣。咁對於呢一方面嘅話，其實你哋有啲咩想同警方去講翻咧？
首先咧，警方你哋非常之無恥啦！我哋見到嘅係咧，有數以10萬計嘅市民咧，用佢自己嘅汗水行出街頭，去和平咁樣去表達自己嘅意願啦。但係我哋見到嘅係警方無理咁樣用唔同嘅暴力手段去打壓一啲和平嘅訴求。如果警方一直咁樣去濫用你哋自己嘅暴力嘅話咧，我唔知呢一班嘅警察咧，到底夜晚係點樣瞓得着嘅咯。所以我哋見到嘅就係咧，佢哋一方面咧就攞警棍咧去追打我哋呢啲年輕嘅學生、和平嘅市民。另一方面咧，竟然咧要求咧政府咧去設立呢個監師會咧，去就係保護佢自己嘅仔女，令到佢哋有特權。呢種你自己咁自相矛盾、咁泯滅良心嘅做法，我想問你哋呢班警察，你自己夜晚瞓唔瞓得着，過唔過意得去咧？多謝。
喂，聽成作為主辦方都有即係嘅籌備小組都有啲嘢，即係都有想補充一點嘅，就係即係我相信有好多市民未必話即係朝頭早已經得閒啊，或者晏晝已經得閒，咁可能諗住夜晚過嚟嘅時候，可能發現點知或者已經喺嚟緊嘅途中先發現原來俾人即係腰斬咗，或者俾人中途要求係要解散咁樣。咁我相信呢一個亦都我哋作為主辦單位都覺得非常之遺憾啦。咁同埋相信我哋今次嘅祈禱會嘅目的主要係有2個啦。之前亦都講過，就係第一就係為咗美國而家受到風災 Dorian 嘅影響嘅市民祈禱啦。第二就係希望可以祈求即係希望可以促請美國國會通過呢一條法案。咁所以即係相信我哋有好多我哋本身嘅祈禱會可能分咗唔同小節嘅時候，咁即係如果突然之間腰斬咗嘅話，我哋就未必可以做得到圓滿嘅結果咯。唔該晒。
所以可能針對908，我總結翻少少，睇下大家會唔會即係方便啲去即係深入翻成件事啦。咁就係首先警方咧就係無理要求大會咧係3點50分嘅時間咧，用少過15分鐘嘅時間去解散群眾啦。但係及後咧大會就已經指出呢一樣嘢咧係唔可行嘅，就話最少要45分鐘。嗱，我必須要即係再講多次係最少45分鐘啦。咁就警方咧就將呢一樣嘢咧就扮係假共識咁樣咧，就話咁就俾你45分鐘啦。但係個重點係咧，就算大會唔同意都好咧，警方咧係會自己加隻腳埋去咧，去強行咁樣宣佈呢個集會係直接結束嘅。咁所以咧，佢話有共識有選擇咧，呢一啲咧全部咧都係假嘅共識、假嘅選擇。警方講緊大話。多謝。
請問有冇記者仲有提問？咁如果冇，我哋今日立法民間記者會就喺度完結啦。多謝各位嘅參與。如果有問題可以留翻低聯絡資料俾我哋再書面回覆。多謝晒。
咩先生咩先生嘅學係
你個成
間嘅兩個人曹先生，陳
先生，何先生陳先生，
跟住兩位召集人，
我係藍少少，
藍少少，姓藍，藍色嘅藍。